The mayor's budget plan, more money for broken streets and failing water pipes, not so much for retaining cops. Corey Briggs is at odds with City Attorney Jan Goldsmith, who dumped cold water on Briggs' Citizen Plan ballot initiative. And SANDAG tries to push its $200 billion transportation plan with some sophisticated and expensive PR. I'm Mark Sauer. The KPBS Roundtable starts now. Welcome to our discussion of the week's top stories. I'm Mark Sauer. And joining me at the KPBS Roundtable today are David Garrick, who covers City Hall for the San Diego Union-Tribune. Hi, David.
Hi, Mark.
Glad to have you back again. Lori Weisberg, who covers marketing and tourism for the Union-Tribune. Hi, Lori.
Hi.
Glad you're here today. And KPBS Enterprise reporter Claire Tregesser. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Mark.
All right, well, there's more money for street repair, storm drains, the homeless, and youth employment in San Diego. Mayor Kevin Faulconer's budget proposal. He also addresses the city's ambitious climate action plan. Here's what he said when he released the budget.
We're holding the city accountable. We're doing things in terms of our zero waste. It's going to be helpful to us. Pedestrian bicycle paths. I'm proud of the work that we're doing on solar installation of city buildings. Those are just part of how we're going to start moving forward and implementing the plan. A plan that I'm proud of, but a plan that has to be monitored over the next several years to make sure that we're achieving these benchmarks that we've set out.
All right, but David, it appears there's less revenue to work with than city leaders had anticipated last year, right?
Yeah, I mean, revenue has been obviously sharply increasing during the economic recovery, but it's definitely plateaued, and so you don't have as many new initiatives that you did. This is Faulconer's third budget since he was elected, and the first two had a lot of interesting new initiatives. Now here he's continuing with some of them, and he's adding probably a smaller number of new things. Okay.
And how does the numbers, the total, I know there's a lot of numbers here and we'll get to some of them,
sure.
But the total overall, how does the current year's budget compare with this proposal?
Well, if you're talking about the overall budget that includes sewer and water and capital improvement, it goes from $3.2 billion to $3.3 billion, so a small increase. And then the general fund, which everyone's sort of more excited about, that's fire, police, parks, libraries, all that. That increases about $38 million, so it's a small increase, basically very, very small.
All right, we got another bite from a mayor. His interests are in city neighborhoods rather than a big issue like Balboa Park and the infrastructure problems there. Here's what he says about priorities.
And we really focused on neighborhood parks. We focused on upgrading playgrounds. We focused on expanding rec center hours. All of the hours we increased last year we're keeping, and we're bringing new rec center hours in to do that. I've had a real focus on libraries, rec centers, neighborhood street repair over the last several years. It's starting to pay off, as you see, like great streets here in Sherman Heights. But the fact of the matter is we have a lot more work to do.
All right, let's get into some of those details then. He mentioned some of the priorities. Which areas are getting more this year?
Street lights, sidewalks, as you mentioned, drainage channels, which became a big issue last fall when there was a lot of fear about the El Nino flooding. You know, the city struggles to clear their drainage channels because of environmental hurdles. You need more people studying them and figuring it out. They're going to triple that from 2 channels a year to 6. They have about 80 channels, and so they're going to be doing 6 a year, and they'll choose the 6 that are the most troubled and most vulnerable.
And of course, we've talked a lot, and you guys have written a lot about the big backlog, maybe $5 billion worth in infrastructure and all. Some people want to do a big mega bond issue to deal with that, but that's not what Mayor Faulconer's doing.
No, Faulconer has been consistent on this. He feels his main argument is the city's not really capable of spending the kind of revenue that a giant mega bond would yield. And he said, you know, small, incremental, and they're ramping it up. The capital improvement budget was $179 million, I think, when he came into office, and now it's like $370 million. So he's more than doubled it, and I think he feels the incremental approach is the right way. And that leads me to one other thing. There's a ballot measure on the June 7th primary called Proposition H.
Yeah, we don't want to say preposition.
No, that would be probably not help with voting. Anyway, it was created by Mark Kersey. It was called Rebuild San Diego, but now it's been officially named Proposition H. And the idea is to take some future sales tax revenue and future pension savings and devote that to infrastructure. So there'll be sort of a reliable, consistent funding stream for infrastructure, because I think big picture, the argument is that San Diego neglected it during the pension crisis, during the Great Recession, and that's one thing it's easy to do when you're cutting. You don't want to cut library hours, you don't want to cut those things. Well, let's not spend on road paving. You know, we'll deal with it later. And as you continue to put things off, they get worse and worse and worse, and everything starts to crumble.
Yeah, we're talking billions. I mean, it's going to take a long time, Laura.
Yeah, so that is, and I was about to ask that same question, but it is the one area of the budget that intrigues me for as long as I can remember, even myself covering this. The backlog has been high, and now it keeps growing every year. And realistically, that what they're devoting to it, yeah, great, but it's a drop in the bucket. So I don't know how long can you keep making that statement? Well, we don't have the ability to spend all that money. I mean, it is really a drop in the bucket. It will only get worse. There's got to be, and I'm surprised that council members aren't a little more upset about that. I saw that those who are running for office are, but I don't hear much from the council members themselves, not even David Alvarez raising that.
Yeah, what does it mean we can't spend it?
Well, I think there's frustration. I mean, the city didn't have an efficient method for spending the money. There was a lot of overlap, a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy is the word people would like to use. Faulconer has tried to what he's described as streamline the process, and I think his argument is we don't want to give them, do a mega bond that yields $3 or $4 billion of money when you have a wasteful process of spending that money. Let's try to make sure that the process is efficient and clean and uses the money efficiently and effectively before maybe we do something like that. And when the San Diego Taxpayers Association and the Chamber of Commerce endorsed the Mark Kersey initiative, which is now Proposition H, they said this is not the solution, but this is a step toward a solution. This is something that maybe we could use as a first step, and then when we're ready, maybe do a mega bond. And it sounds like that's not going to convince Lori, but at least it's a coherent argument.
From the perspective of hearing this for decades.
For a long time. It's never going to come
no one, not Faulconer, no one is saying this is the solution. I think they're saying that this is a positive step in the right direction. When we have extra revenue, let's devote it to that as opposed to other things that, are not as nuts and bolts as infrastructure, because in the past, when the city was flush with money, they didn't focus on infrastructure. At least you could argue now, at least they're doing that.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about another chronic problem here, very serious problem, homelessness. What does the mayor's proposal do for that?
He just did the Housing 1,000 Veterans thing, so that's not actually part of this budget, but it's part of the current one, and it's certainly a new program. He mostly just keeps it at the 1.9 million. He doubled it. After he took over, he doubled from $1 million to 1.9 million the city's annual expenditure, and that has allowed them to have a year-round shelter, which was kind of an important innovation. And they've ramped up a lot of different housing first model type things to get people off the streets as quickly as possible, into counseling, into social services, into drug treatment.
So stuff they've been doing, more for stuff they've been doing. And we said
they're adding two things. One is that they're going to increase from 32 to 60 the number of beds in the serial inebriate program. That's for people who are chronically arrested for being drunk on the street.
Frequent flyers.
Right. There's a lot of folks like that. And this actually, they argue, might even save money, because a lot of those folks put a lot of stress on, they get picked up by EMS and they deal with police, but the initial cost is about $200,000 to go from 32 beds to 60 beds. And if you remember, they yanked that Portland loo out over near Petco Park, the one that was a specialty toilet everyone thought was going to be great. It was terrible. They had to yank it out. Anyway, they're paying about $100,000 to have 24-hour bathrooms near St. Vincent de Paul, the shelter. So they're right next to there where all the homeless congregate. That's another element they're sort of moving forward on homelessness.
Work on that. And we mentioned at the outset here the big problem of retaining police officers in the city. We talked about that quite a bit. A lot of stories on that. What's the budget say on that score?
The budget doesn't really do anything new on that. I think Faulconer's case would be that last year the city council approved a $92 million package of compensation increases for police. This is higher pay comes in a couple years, but they've got their more take-home pay because the uniform allowances, leave stuff, a lot of different things.
That was in the works, yeah.
So that's been in effect since July. A lot of folks have thought that was going to solve the retention crisis. They keep losing officers, like 14 a month. A lot of it's to retirement, but a lot of it's to other agencies like the sheriffs and smaller police departments. A lot of people thought this would solve the problem magically. Faulconer's argument is, hey, we've only had these raises in effect since July. That's only 9 months. We increased the size of the police academies 2 years ago. Let's see if these things work, as opposed to making additional compensation increases now. Councilman Alvarez says, this is a crisis. We need to do more now. We need to consider letting cops take their cars home. We need to do a lot of other additional things. Faulconer's idea is, let's wait and see these other big changes we've made just recently might still have the kind of effect we were hoping.
They're still losing officers, though.
They are still losing. The rate has not decreased. So
it's not help.
No.
All right, we will move on, but just so the public knows, there will be public hearings. There's revisions. It's a whole process here, and the council members and the public
won't be finalized till mid-June.
Weigh in as we go. Okay, several more months on that. All right, San Diego city attorney this week dumped buckets of ice water in the so-called Citizens Initiative. That's the one from environmental attorney Corey Briggs that hikes hotel taxes for a variety of purposes. Signature gathering is underway for the measure, but now Jan Goldsmith's double-barreled blast could make the road to November ballot very steep. Lori, why does Goldsmith say this plan clearly violates the law?
Well, he has a number of reasons. He cites about a half dozen. One of them, as you may or may not know, the Citizens Plan covers a number of topics, trying to get maybe money for a convention center, money for tourism marketing, redevelopment of Qualcomm site if the Chargers no longer play there. He says that...
Isn't there elements of clean water and beaches and all sorts of things? Well,
parkland in Mission Valley, yeah. So a number of things, but he argues, well, that violates the single subject rule, that an initiative can only address one single subject.
And that's California law.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, I think the idea is again sort of pork barreling. I mean, in Congress, they'll put a bill together on one thing, and then someone will tack something in completely unrelated.
Yeah, completely.
So the idea was, if citizens were going to do an initiative, they wanted it to focus on one thing.
Now, Corey Briggs will tell you, well, we are focusing on one thing. The whole amalgamation of tourist and entertainment resources, that is our single subject.
Okay, so he says that umbrella topic is what
is
the
our
one
single
topic.
subject.
Yeah.
There's also the city attorney brings up what he calls the poison pill, that if any one portion of an initiative, this initiative says if any one portion of the initiative is found illegal, the whole initiative goes down. Corey, in a recent press conference when he was addressing this, said, well, you know, this was meant to be a compromise. And so we put that in consciously so that if one thing did fail, then the rest of it should fail because it was a compromise, because all of the elements have to work. So he said that was deliberate.
And Goldsmith says that it puts the city at risk.
Right.
Why? Do you know why exactly that is?
Because I think because if one thing fails, then you could sue on multiple grounds.
And you started collecting all this tax money, and then what happens?
Right.
Now you're in this pickle where you've got this pot of tax money you're supposed to be spending on this stuff. How do you pay it back? What happens to all
Well,
that
he had
fund?
the example of the convention center where they weren't sure that the hotel fee was legal, and so they didn't start.
So they held off on
and
that.
they didn't start it.
And the dangerous thing here is that
David?
typically what you would do is you'd be collecting that money to pay off, you'd sell bonds to get money to build a convention center, and then that money would pay them off. Well, if you're in the process of doing that, and you get sued on one of the other elements, and you lose, and the whole thing falls apart, then you're in the middle of paying off these bonds, and you lose the revenue to pay them off.
But the other interesting thing is that there's a parallel. The tourism marketing district, the tourism money that we have a 2% surcharge on our hotel bills, they have been collecting money. It's under litigation. If Corey, and Corey's the one who sued on it, if Corey prevails, they could potentially have to pay back a lot of money they've been collecting.
I want to get back more into that in a minute. We do have a couple of bites here I do want to get to. City Attorney Goldsmith, he also objects to the way the tax increases handled in the initiative. Here's what he told KPBS's Maureen Kavanaugh.
Tax funds revenue must first go to the city's treasurer. Then it gets allocated. This initiative allows the hotel operators who collect tax revenue from the guests to simply pocket the money and reimburse themselves for certain expenses. That's illegal under our charter, and it's illegal under state law. There really isn't any doubt. You just can't do that.
All right, but Briggs, for his part, says Goldsmith is wrong about every point he makes. Here's what he said at a press conference this week responding to this memo.
The memo is not a serious legal memo. It's a political document. It appears to me that it is the beginning of a process that the city intends to implement to prevent the voters from once again weighing in on big issues affecting the city's future. If you take a look at the memo, one of the options discussed is the radical and undemocratic idea that the city would simply refuse to put the citizens' plan on the ballot if we get enough signatures. That's unprecedented to my knowledge.
All right, is he right? Is the city attorney and other folks on his side playing politics with this whole thing, or what?
Probably to agree, but I think the bigger issue is, I mean, he does raise a good issue. We spent a lot of money, we collected these signatures, we presumably will qualify for the ballot. Should the city council, should the city attorney now deny that right? I mean, they have the power to, but should they do that? And then you really are treading into political territory.
Well, I think bigger picture, let's remember who asked the city attorney for opinion on this. It was Mayor Faulconer, and Mayor Faulconer's in a political situation now deciding how to handle the stadium, because this is a part of a bigger, wider debate about the stadium.
Right, it's kind of dueling initiatives with the whole Charger idea.
And I think if the mayor would like to back the Chargers initiative, I'm not saying he would, but it's possible that he would, this initiative going away would help make that a clearer, more coherent decision.
Now, how's an average voter supposed to sort all this out? You all have covered this. You've done interviews on it. You've thought about it, read clips about it, gone back and follow-up questions. Oh, how's the average voter? How does this fit on a bumper sticker? I mean, even if you have a Hummer, you can't get this on a bumper sticker.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, bumper sticker. It's funny when they've been collecting signatures. Their bumper sticker message was "Keep Comic-Con in San Diego." That was, and then Comic-Con said, "No, that's not what this initiative is going to do." But and then complicating matters, as David pointed out, there's also the charges, and we don't know if it's going to qualify. They're later this month going to start collecting signatures.
Just start getting signatures.
So you're going to have two ballot measures to raise the hotel tax for kind of different things.
But they're sort of in talks with each other.
They are,
right?
Yeah.
So there's the chance that maybe they'll combine, but they say that they aren't going to do that.
One may go away. Yeah. Well, is this good news? The Goldsmith memo kind of trying to put the kibosh on this. Is this good news for that Chargers Convadium, big multi-use stadium facility downtown?
Well, only if the city were to try to get it off the ballot and clear the way. I mean, Fred Moss, who's the Chargers special advisor on this, has said, gee, ideally we would love to only have one initiative, but we're not going to push them aside. We're not backing off. Corey Briggs has said we're not backing off. So yeah, then you're back to your original question: is there voter confusion?
But if the city council does sue to keep this off the ballot, right, then I think that is a positive development for the Chargers proposal.
Because that one clears.
Even if it's illegal, it's still probably a positive development.
Now, we want to have one more bite to this. It goes to a story you did, Lori, this week. This is Corey Briggs here challenging the existing hotel tax of the tourism marketing that's been settled. Here's what he has to say on that.
What I'm confident about, Ed, is that I was told after the meeting on April 4th that there was a unanimous vote to accept the settlement, one term of which is that the TMD organization would endorse the citizens plan.
So this is his lawsuit. Tell us what this lawsuit's about, and is there a settlement or isn't there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So his lawsuit challenges the hoteliers voted in a 2% surcharge on room bills, and he says no, that should have been voted on by the public, and he's suing over that. It's classic he said, she said. I mean, he said there's a settlement. They voted on it. The Tourism Marketing District came out with a statement that said we didn't vote on a settlement. I've heard privately saying they didn't vote on this. So, but he says he has permission to say that they voted on it. So,
and that's why he called the news conference in the first place to say we're announcing the settlement, and then people get there and he won't say anything about what the settlement is.
Not so fast on the settlement.
A little bait and switch on that news conference.
Well, where does Mayor Faulconer and other city leaders stand on all of this? How are we to figure out what all this means?
Mayor Faulconer hasn't taken a stand yet, as you know, on the Chargers initiative. There's some council members, I think Councilman Cate has taken a strong stand of not in favor. You've got some hoteliers privately saying this is too big a jump in the hotel tax. It won't make us very competitive with our rivals. So, but there is no, the mayor's office so far has been silent, and some criticize him for being silent.
And some council members and candidates have endorsed the citizens plan as well.
Mostly Democrats, mostly.
Yeah.
So when all this has to sort out, we are in an election year. At some point, we go to the ballot.
Luckily, these initiatives don't go till November, and the June primary is before that. But there's a lot that needs to be sorted out in the next few months, for sure.
Well, we'll be watching all your stories as we move forward on this very interesting issue. Well, 4 years ago, the San Diego Association of Governments created a plan to fund future regional transportation needs. It didn't go well. Environmentalists sued the association for not doing enough to curb greenhouse gas emissions, and SANDAG has lost twice in lower courts, could lose again in the state Supreme Court. Determined to avoid that fate with its newest $200 billion transportation plan, SANDAG launched a coordinated public relations effort spending $500,000 in outside consultants. Claire, start with this transportation plan. What is it? And it goes over a long period of time. It's a big number, 200 billion.
Yeah, it's 35 years, and they have to revise it every 4 years, and it outlines how transportation tax dollars are going to be spent, whether they go towards highways or public transit, bike paths, things like that.
How we're going to shape transportation going forward and over a long period of time. So tell us about this PR plan. There were some kind of targets in the media, and you were one of them, right? What's that all about?
Yeah, I mean, the reason actually why I became interested in the story is because SANDAG said, we want to come and meet with you. It was me identified in the email. It turned out to be me and several other KPBS staff members, and then they brought Councilman Todd Gloria with them, and I said, what is going on here? This is a strange thing. I haven't really experienced anything like this. So that I asked for their emails about KPBS and San Diego Union Tribune, Voice of San Diego, things like that. So that's how I first found out about it, yeah.
Okay, and in those emails, it was kind of revealing. So the idea was to get all the various political leaders, SANDAG staff, everybody on the same page selling this wonderful plan to go forward with this plan.
Yeah, so they had an outside media consultant who kind of outlined this plan, which had different facets to it. One was to publish these op-eds in different local newspapers. One was to brief reporters. One was to monitor social media, things like that, and kind of a schedule for them to follow leading up to the October vote on the plan.
So they have, as you pointed out in your story, a pretty robust SANDAG, pretty robust communications staff.
Right.
And I saw their responses as to why their communications staff could not handle all of that. But after you did all your research, at the end of the day, did you feel like, no, they had enough in-house staff that they could have done what they needed to do?
Yeah, I mean, what they said is they only had one staff member who was devoted to answering all the questions, and really the outside people, I mean, they didn't say this, but it seems clear. They weren't handling reporters' questions or setting up interviews. They were kind of big picture strategy. I don't know if you would use a staff member to do something like that, but they do have the head of the communications department, so it seems like maybe she could have done that. They don't necessarily need to hire outside. I also checked with the city and county, and they say they've never hired outside media consultants, so this is sort of unique in that way.
So it was a big push, but as we said at the outset, once burned, maybe twice shy, so they wanted to try and get folks on their side right now. Now, just to play devil's advocate, once SANDAG or an agency like this agrees on a plan, they kind of want to put the best foot forward and get the public behind it, right? But this is unusual.
Right. Well, I mean, as I said in the story, I don't think that it is necessarily unusual. It was just a picture of how this, you know, how government agencies do things like this. And I think people on the other side say, you know, it's one thing to be putting the information out there and telling people, here's what's in the plan. It's another to be really pushing to say, this plan is really good, everyone should support it.
No, and one thing I found disturbing maybe is the focus on the voice had to be the same. Let's all keep our talking points the same. You know, all the officials were supposed to say the same thing, and then they would.
And the op-eds are laying over one another.
And they were negotiating with people like, we're writing the op-ed. Let's just see who's willing to put their name on it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's.
Yeah, that raises kind of an ethical thing. No matter, you know, the issue of authorship, whether you're talking about a journalist or a politician, if someone's signing their name on something and it's being published for public consumption here, they really should kind of be the one who wrote it, or be fair about, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I heard from communications people after the story ran that said, I would never do something like that. That's, you know, when people find out that that's the person whose name on it didn't write it, people get upset about that.
And not everybody signed up with that idea, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because they originally wanted a different local leader and business leader in every community to sign on, and they only really were able to get two. They wanted Councilman Todd Gloria and Jerry Sanders, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, to sign one together. That didn't happen. So they ended up just having the same two people, a Santee council member and Ron Roberts, county supervisor, sign most of them because they couldn't get other people to sign on.
Yeah, you had that email that said, you know, we'll respectfully decline.
Right,
and I think, did you think they saw what's going on and they didn't think, you know, we should be a part of something like that? I don't know if they ever told you why.
I mean, I think, you know, the SANDAG plan can be controversial, and a lot of environmental groups really don't like it. So say you're the mayor of Solana Beach or something like that, you may not want to really put your name on something that's going to support something. They end up still voting for it, but they don't want to really be out there saying this is a good plan.
And you have kind of an amusing account of SANDAG trying to respond to some of the negative tweets and all of this.
Yeah, I mean, they had a staffer who spent several hours a week going through social media. She would send all the tweets and Facebook posts that mentioned SANDAG out to staff, and they would all kind of confer and decide how to respond. And there was one that it was just this barrage of negative tweets, and David Hicks, who works for SANDAG, said, oh, maybe we could spend all day going through every single one and responding, but first we would have to clear them all through legal. I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, what about the plan itself? I mean, they've had the lawsuits, as we've said. You know, environmentalists aren't happy. They're trying to push it forward again, but has a lot changed, or is it still, you know, not the public transit plan a lot of people want to see?
I mean, again, that depends on who you ask.
Their perspective.
You know, you've covered this as well. They say that this plan, you know, really front loads public transit. The environmental groups say no.
And the backdrop is sort of the climate action situation. I mean, with the global warming, it's like, you know, a lot of environmentalists feel it's very important for a 35-year transit plan to really prioritize mass transit and bicycling and pedestrians. But there's other folks who want Highway 78 widened so badly. So there's a lot of competing interests. And if you need 2/3 approval, which this needs 2/3, I mean, you've got to please all the people all the time, and that's difficult to do.
A few seconds left. What sort of response have you gotten from this story?
It's interesting. This has been one of the most popular stories I've ever done. I've gotten tons of emails from people saying, great story, great job. I haven't really heard anything from SANDAG. I think some people say, you know, this isn't anything unusual, which I did say in the story. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see as we move along, and maybe there's a follow-up to do there. That does wrap up another week of stories at the KPBS Roundtable. I'd like to thank my guests, David Garrick of the San Diego Union Tribune, Lori Weisberg, also of the Union Tribune, and Claire Tregesser of KPBS News. A reminder, all the stories we discussed today are on our website, kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer. Thanks for joining us today on the Roundtable.